too, to kind of get here and get settled in. So I always like to start it a couple minutes after. That's the way I start the office meetings as well. So first of all, thank you all for joining. And again, feel free, chime in, unmute yourself and chime in if you have some things that you want to add in. But what I really want to cover today is I want to cover the purchase contract and how we can get our offers accepted in this crazy market that we're dealing with right now. As you know, our inventories are extremely low, and anything that's under $1.5 million seems like it's getting multiple offers on. So trying to find something that we can get an offer put in on and get it accepted is a hard thing to do. So let's go. I'm just pulling up for you guys online here. I'm pulling up the purchase contract and transaction desk as well, so that we can take a look at that and we can run through it. Residential purchase contract. Okay, so I'm going to present screen. All right. So first thing that we're going to do is we'll go into the purchase contract. And I'm going to give you my 2 cents on this as well, guys. Real estate is all about conversations, and it's about having conversations with your client, having conversations with the other agent, and that's going to be probably the biggest thing that you can do to get your offer accepted, is to have a really good quality conversation with the listing agent. Find out what the seller's looking for. Are they money driven? Are they terms driven? All of the above driven? What are the things that they're really looking for out of the property? If the listing agent will give you some input there, it can really go a long way in helping you write your purchase contract so that it will be one that the seller will take a look at. The other thing that you're going to want to really make sure is, if you're writing a financed offer, which most of us are, make sure that you get a solid pre-qualification form. Make sure that it's signed by your buyer. Make sure that it's signed by the lender. It contains all the lender information on it. And make sure that you understand what that pre-qualification form is as well. You know what your client's limits are, and that you know what they can do and what they can't do. So understanding that piece of it is also going to be a very big part of writing your purchase contract. And again, it's having that conversation with the other agent is extremely important. I'm going to I got to thank you for whoever's jumping in there and admitting. Please keep doing that. And we'll hide that. Yes. Yep.
If you have a lender that you're not familiar with and they're out of state, make sure that they're using the most recent pre-qual form. I don't know about you, but there's a new one. What's the last date that it's out, Todd? The most recent pre-qual?
The last date that the pre-qual was out, let's just jump over here. We can take a look real quick.
Is it 17 still?
No. There's been one that's been
that was the one before
since then.
So yeah, I'd gotten one from 17 and they wasn't the most recent. So just to point it out, make sure that if it's a lender you're not familiar with or they're out-of-state lender, that they use the most recent one.
Yeah, pre-qualification form. Here's the latest one in transaction desk. February. It is February of 17. I thought I thought we had a newer one than that. But that's February of 17 is the latest one. So yeah, making sure that they are using the latest one. But you will find lenders out there who are using forms from 2014 or 2010. Those will get kicked out. You'll get the little purple mark in your transaction in SkySlope if you use those. So make sure that they're using their correct updated forms. All right, so let's go back into here. We'll go into the purchase contract again. Lease agreement, purchase contract. There we go. All right, so again, correctly doing everything on here is going to save you a lot of time. Buyer, seller, that kind of stuff. When you're writing your contract, double check and make sure that A, you have your buyer's name correctly, the way that they want to take title, and B, that you have the seller the way that the seller is going to be on the contract. So just because that's what it says in the MLS, or just because that's what gets imported in from the MLS, may not be correct. So you want to double check and make sure, so you don't have to go back in and correct things later on. Make sure you've got correct information there. Again, talk to your seller or talk to your listing agent to make sure that you have the right information. If you can't get the right information and you're not sure, leave it blank and check that box that says as identified in section 9C. That's probably the best way to do it if you don't know for sure what you're going to be putting in that box. because then you don't have to go back and do an addendum to change it later on. When the seller signs Section 9C of the contract, that will designate who the actual seller is and how they are going to take. Premise address, again, all this stuff should be done, pulled in. If you're doing MLS Connect, it'll pull all that fun stuff in. Purchase price, putting your purchase price in, your earnest money. Again, you want to put as strong an earnest money as your buyer is willing to put in. So the amount of money that they're comfortable with. Yes.
There's a question from Stan.
Yes.
Stan, go ahead and mute yourself.
You know, when you do the transaction desk, the MLS Connect, it's always pretty annoying when the wrong name gets pulled over. For example, a lot of agents like to put client off ABC Realty. Is there a reason why agents do that?
I can tell you why I used to do it, and I was a high proponent of this. Back before we had the MLS Connect and before we automatically imported information in there, I would always put client of Berkshire Hathaway because I didn't want my client's name on the plano. I know that the buyer's agent or whoever could always go in to, they could go into Monsoon or to, whatever the tax database is, and they could find out who the seller was. But I was trying to protect my seller from having phone conversations, because you guys all know that there are agents out there who will try to bypass you, and they're going to try to get to your seller, and they're going to try to have conversations with them. So I would just eliminate that from the MLS and put client of Berkshire Hathaway. But yes, now there is really no reason, because just a lot of things have changed in the last few years, and especially with the MLS Connect, you want to make sure that you're putting the correct information in there so that when it comes through and we connect it will have the right name down. You're doing your seller a service by actually putting the correct name in the MLS now. Thank you. That good question, Stan.
Thank you, Todd.
All right. Earnest money in the form of personal check, wire, transfer, or other. I'm not going to go through the whole purchase contract and tell you how to write a contract. We're just strictly trying to figure out what are the best ways to get your contract accepted. So we can do a purchase contract class. That usually takes me about 5 hours to go through and do a purchase contract class and go through it in depth. But we're not going to do that today. So we're going to just kind of run through some of this stuff. Escrow company. Again, if you have to use their escrow company, use their escrow company. It's going to be the best way to, if they're requesting to use somebody, if you can use their title company. I know that we all have our preferred title companies that we want to use, and we want to use our vendor partners if we possibly can. But to get your client's offer accepted, do what you need to do, which means if you have to acquiesce and use their title company, it's not the end of the world. I know with OS National right now for Open Door, I know we've had a lot of complaints about them and how they work and how, just what a pain they are. I will share a little tidbit of information with you. It was Kenneth O'Connor, one of the agents in our office, gave me this little tidbit last Friday. He said, if you don't want to use OS National, the way to get around it is to say that your client wants to sign and record same day. Because if you say my clients want to sign and record same day, OS National can't do that. So they will allow you to change. But I do know that FNF is actually doing a lot of Open Door transactions right now. We've got a couple of them in this office that Open Door is the seller, and FNF, Fidelity National, is actually handling the escrow on that. So just a little tidbit of fun that you can actually get around using OS National if you say you want to sign and fund the same day, or sign and record the same day. Again, making sure everything is filled out is going to be the best way you want to do things here. Asking for as little as you can. Going into financing, again, making sure that you have a completely filled out pre-qualification form. And there are other ways to go about this. If your client is getting beat out consistently by having to finance their house, you may want to look at some other options. There are a couple of other options out there. Well, there are several other options out there, but one of them is our own vendor partner is using Apex or Zoom Casa, and having them purchase the home for your client, and then they can do it with cash, and then they'll turn around and sell it to your client. It's going to end up costing them about 3%, roughly around 3% of the loan value is about what it will cost them. But I tell you what, that 3% is probably less than what you will pay for if you have to go over and above cash price to try to make it worthwhile. So it may definitely be something you want to look at. Have a conversation with with Danielle from Apex and see if it's an option that would work for your client. So having to finance can be a bit of a challenge. Any questions out there so far on that? All right, again, seller concessions right now, we're not going to try to ask for any seller concessions. Seller concessions are pretty much going to be non-existent for the near future until we get back into a little bit more of a balanced market, unless something has been on the market for a longer period of time. If you're dealing with a property that's been on the market for 30 days or longer, you may have a little bit of leverage to do some things with it. So keep an eye on the days on the market for properties. But if it's been on the market for 30 days, chances are there's a reason why it's been on the market for 30 days. What you can do, and you can't do it here, and I'll show you where we do that. Instead of having seller concessions, have buyer concessions. Instead of continuing to raise your purchase price and put your purchase price to a point where you know it's never going to appraise or you're certain it's not going to appraise, maybe what you want to do is you have some buyer concessions towards the seller's closing cost. So what we can do, and I'll show you how to write that in section 8 and the extra terms in there, but what you can do is write in there that the buyer will contribute X dollar amount towards seller's closing cost. That comes off the seller's net. So that's gonna definitely bring the seller's net up, where if you just keep rising purchase price, that also raises commission and closing cost. So the seller's net doesn't go up as probably nearly as much as if you just straight gave them a credit. So that's something to consider. That's one way to differentiate yourself as well, is let's talk to them about possibly offering them a credit. And what I would definitely do in that case is, if you're going to do that, send them a net sheet. You can do a seller net sheet and send them the seller net sheet that shows them the difference between if we added this on as a purchase onto the contract price, or if we do it as a seller credit. And you can show them, and the seller will see that they're actually going to net more that way, which will make you more attractive. Again, all these things are going to help you stand out. They're going to help relay to the listing agent that you know what you're doing, that you're going to be an agent that's going to be easy to talk to and easy to work with, and that it's going to make the transaction a lot smoother. Appraisal contingency. I know that right now it's really tempting to go ahead and remove your appraisal contingency. That can be very risky. You're putting your client's earnest money at risk if they don't have the money to come up with the difference between appraised value and purchase price. But here's another thing to consider, and I'm going through just some of these little ideas here, things that you can do to help differentiate. If your client is willing to put their earnest money somewhat at risk, if you give up your appraisal contingency but don't give up your inspection period, you still have a 10-day period in which you can get your appraisal conducted. So if you order your appraisal immediately once you get under contract, chances are you'll get that back within that 10-day period. Talk to your lender and just try to make sure that that's an option that will happen. But if you can get that appraisal back within that 10-day inspection period, you still have your out to be able to cancel and get your client's earnest money back, even if you've waived the appraisal contingency. So, Gary, did you have something on that?
You said waiving the appraisal contingency, but then you said that the appraisal will be done in 10 days.
If you can get your appraisal ordered immediately after getting your contract accepted, chances are you can get the appraisal done in 10 days. The appraisers aren't backed up to the point like they were before, because there isn't enough inventory out there for them to be backed up as much as they were. They're still very busy, and you want to make sure that you check. So talk to your lender, have that good communication with your lender, and make sure that they can get if they're confident they can get the appraisal done in 10 days, great. So it's a way for you to be able to waive something, but not really waive it. You're waiving the appraisal contingency, but you can actually cancel, and you can cancel for, pretty much any other myriad of reasons in your inspection period. And if the appraisal comes in, you can still let them know the appraisal came in at X, at that point, then it will give you an option to be able to have a conversation with the listing agent and with the seller and say, hey, listen, the appraisal came in at this dollar amount. We're not going to be able to make this happen. If you can, come down in purchase price and maybe we come up a little bit with a little extra money, then you can maybe work the situation out. But at least you're in your inspection period where you can still cancel and get their earnest money back at that point. So it's a method of being able to waive your appraisal contingency without actually putting their money at risk if the appraisal doesn't come in. Again, I'm going to repeat this over and over again. Have that conversation with your lender to make sure that you can get it done in the 10 days. If they can't get it done in the 10 days, then your buyer may end up losing his earnest money if it comes in low and they can't get it done. Appraisal costs paid for by the buyer, almost always. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So say that the appraisal came in high, would it be possible to do an addendum where you lower the purchase price but give them back the buyer credit like you were talking about? So they're still netting, but it's not affecting. Does that actually accomplish anything?
I don't think it really does, because I think I understand what you're saying, but your purchase price is still going to be your purchase price. If you do an addendum to raise your purchase price, you're hurting your buyer at that point.
No, to look.
Yeah, you're already under contract at that point, so you don't want to give any more up at that point. You don't want to pay any more for it. It's just great for your buyer that you actually got it for under what appraised value is. But yeah, you wouldn't want to raise your purchase price. That would be counterproductive. You're already under contract. You're not doing it to get your contract accepted.
Okay, I'm getting my dyslexia is kicking in this because I was thinking something opposite of how I ended up saying it and how you're responding. So I'll just let the whole thing go unless it gets settled.
Well, if you figure it out, just let me know. If you figure out how you want to say it.
If I was thinking more of the purchase was higher than what it appraised for. And wait a minute, no, I'm getting it backwards now. Yeah, so they were going to have to make up the difference.
Okay.
If they somehow lowered the purchase price, but gave them the credit, that somehow there's like the seller's still getting the higher amount, but it's not. I don't know. I was just thinking that somehow it might help with the loan for. I have to do the math. Never mind.
Yeah, I don't. It's going to be kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen the other. I don't think they're really going to save the buyer or save the seller any money on that by doing it. They're still going to net pretty much the same thing either way. I would have to look at I'd have to look at the math on that to make sure, but I don't think it's going to really save them much if you lower the purchase price and gave them a credit instead of doing instead of keeping it. It would, yeah, you're right. It actually would save them a little bit of money if you lowered their purchase price and gave them a credit. But the problem is that your buyer's going to have to come up with out of the pocket money to do that, where they would have to come up with out of pocket money anyway to go. But if they did the appraisal shortfall, is that what you're kind of referring to?
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of they were going to have issues with their loan because they were going to have to make up a difference if there was a way to somehow shift it but I guess not.
There's for those of you who are on, if you guys were on the prosperity call on the 2nd, or was it the 2nd that we had that? Yeah, it was February 2nd when we had the prosperity call. They've got some really creative, fun stuff that they can do to try to help salvage a deal if your appraisal comes in short, or so there's some fun things that they can do there as far as taking money from earnest or taking money from down payment and shifting it and paying it forward towards buying out your PMI. And doing a one-time PMI instead of having PMI added onto your price. So I'm not going to get into the math part of that, but they have some really creative ideas. So talk to your prosperity person if you have any questions on that and want to learn more about some of the creative things that they can do to help if you come in with a shortfall.
Did they record that one?
Yes, they did. Yep, they did.
Cool. Yeah, I was in Oregon, had my time off, and went to go do it, and it was already over.
Yep. Yeah, it was recorded. I got a message the other day that it was recorded, and they sent me a copy of the recording, so I could dig through and probably forward it to you if I can find it.
I probably have it then.
I just had a question in here: is what percentage of houses are appraising now? I are not appraising right now. I really don't know that there is a huge problem with appraisals. I'm sure there is at some point, but I don't have a dollar figures or a percentage figure as to what's appraising and what's not. If any of you guys have it out there, please feel free, shout it out. Okay, title investing, additional instructions, taxes, prorations, continuing on insurance, lead-based paint, seller, nothing there that we're going to do there. Due diligence period. Again, if you can get your inspection done in less than 10 days, feel free to shorten your inspection period, and that will also help you to stand out a little bit. Now, again, make sure that if you're shortening your inspection period, you're not also trying to get your appraisal done in that time period. So if you leave this at 10 days, great. If you shorten this, just make sure that you are going to give yourself ample time to get all of the inspections that you want done. So if you're doing a home inspection, a roof inspection, a pool inspection, anything like that, making sure that you're getting all that done within your time period. I know that we've got a few partners here that could get the home inspection done within a day or two after you get it under contract. So you could definitely shorten that up from 10 and then make yourself stand out a little bit. Again, waiving your inspection period is never advised. You would never want to advise your client to waive inspection period. That's just a death sentence. Yeah, I mean, you could waive your right to ask for repairs, but do not waive the inspection period. Do not waive your client's right to actually get an inspection done so that they know what they're getting themselves into. All right, on-site sewer, wastewater treatment, nothing there that we can really go into that's going to help save anything buyer's disapproval. Response times, you're not going to want to mess with response times much. Home warranty plan, again, this is one of those things that unless your seller is, really just feels like they want to cover a home warranty, most sellers are not springing for one right now. But if you're a listing agent and you're talking to your seller, again, I think you're missing an opportunity here to really explain to your seller, I know we want to net the most money we can out of this, but this home warranty is really your peace of mind to make sure that if anything goes wrong after close of escrow, they're not going to come back after you for a non-disclosure of something that they say you knew was an issue. So I still think it's a pretty cheap insurance policy to make sure that if something goes wrong, they can take it to a title or take it to a home warranty company instead of coming back after your seller. So I still am a proponent of this, even if the seller doesn't want to pay for it, I would just still explain to them that it's not a bad idea. It's not a waste of their money. And on the buyer's side, I would definitely say, hey, I would think that it would be a good thing to do, put a home warranty on a property, because we all know, we've all been involved in the transaction where a day, 2-3 days after closing, the water heater blows up, or the air conditioning stops working, or they have some kind of a plumbing issue that happens. And now all of a sudden the client, they had decided they didn't want a home warranty, and that money is going to fall strictly on their pocket. Or what they're going to do is they're going to start looking to blame people. And they're going to start wanting to blame you. They're going to want to blame the home warranty or the home inspection company. They're going to want to blame the seller. So it's always best to try to make sure that there's a home warranty on the property, just to give you that extra peace of mind. Walk through seller's responsibilities, IRS and FERPTA. We're not going to do anything of that. All right. So here is where I will just type in how I would simply put. Wow, you got crazy there. Whatever your dollar amount is. Period. That's it. Simple, plain and simple language. Don't cloud it with anything else. Don't put in there anything other than that. That's just a plain simple way, buyer to credit blank towards seller closing cost. So you can put the dollar amount in there, and that way that's the best way to put that in there. Does anybody else have anything else that they want to add in, that something that they would do? Shara?
I actually, oh, sorry.
Go ahead first. Go ahead, and then Shara.
I was going to say, if it's blank, I actually have it already preset in my template to say this page is intentionally left blank.
Yes. Yeah, I know a lot of people do that, to say this page is intentionally left blank so that people can't come in and write something in underneath and add terms into the contract.
Okay, so I recently had a offer that we submitted from my buyers, and the listing agent came back and said, would your buyers be willing to buy an as-is condition? And so I replied back to her and said, if you remember the days of the as-is addendum, they basically mean nothing, because that doesn't waive the inspection period. You're still going to purchase the property, and if you find anything in the inspection period that's hazardous or health related, you're going to ask for it anyway. So basically, as-is means nothing. That's the first thing. A second thing is we've gotten creative where if your lender cannot do the appraisal in 10 days, you can do one of two things. You can give a portion of your earnest deposit to be non-refundable after inspection period and or appraisal is completed. So in that case, if your lender can't do it within the 10 days, you raise the inspection period to maybe like 15.
Yep.
And then a portion of your earnest deposit goes non-refundable to the seller upon complete inspection and appraisal. I don't always want to throw appraisal in there because it's kind of iffy right now. Lenders are great, but they're still at the mercy of inspectors, or I mean appraisers. But definitely after inspection period, if you can give a portion of that money back to the seller, they're in it.
Yep.
And that's really what sellers are or buyers are looking for, is the condition of the home. Value will be the value, and you can always renegotiate terms when the appraisal comes back. But if there's something majorly wrong in the inspection, and if there's nothing majorly wrong, you're going to move forward.
Yeah.
So at least that gives the seller some confirmation that they're going to get something in case the buyer were to walk.
Let's talk a little bit about releasing money to the seller, and or making earnest money non-refundable, because those are two separate things. Making earnest money non-refundable, totally on board with that. I think that's a great idea, to really show that your client is committed. They're willing to say, yep, we don't want this money back. We're good with that going forward. That should be the seller can keep that. What I don't like is releasing it to the seller so that the title company cuts a check and sends the money to the seller. If something goes bad, if something goes wrong, and the seller completely screws up and blows the deal up, and yes, you've agreed to, they have agreed that they were going to release or that they were going to make it non-refundable. Making something non-refundable and holding it in title is one thing. Making it non-refundable and giving it to the seller so that they have it in their pocket. Yeah. So I would just recommend that you just make it non-refundable, but not release it to the seller.
Well, it also needs to say, except for seller breach.
Correct. So if we look at Charlie has some great clauses. See if I can find that in here. Where did I have that? Sorry, guys. I'm in the process of switching over to getting away from Dropbox and moving into G Drive, and I'm having a hard time with it. I'm just going to be blatantly honest. I'm really having a hard time moving from Dropbox over to G Drive, and that has to do with corporate. Okay, manager files. I think it's in here. Is Charlie's clauses. Charlie's classes. That's not Charlie's classes. That's Charlie's clauses. It might be in here.
Todd, I just saw it on your screen. It's additional clauses. Oh,
It's
I
additional
just saw it
clauses?
again. No, I just saw it again.
All right.
Go down.
Is it additional clauses? Not there.
And then you have Charlie in parentheses.
The clauses. Charlie approved. There we go.
There it
Thank
is.
you. I knew I had them somewhere. So Charlie wrote these out a few years ago. So some of them are definitely going to need to be updated a little bit and tweaked. We need to see this says revised 2018. So it's been 4 years since Charlie did these. But okay, so you've got appraisals. Appraisal, the sale is contingent upon appraisal, blah, 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 for at least sales price. We don't need to use this one anymore because we actually have the additional clause addendum now that has the appraisal shortfall in it. So the appraisal shortfall, you can use that one instead of using Charlie's clause here. Waiver of appraisal, you can, that's again, I think that's up to, let's see, buyer agrees to buyer's down payment shall increase. Yeah, that's the appraisal shortfall. So you don't need to use that one. Backup contract, contingent upon canceling a prior contract. So if you're use the additional clause addendum, but we're not going to go into that one today. Contingency for the sale of a buyer's property. Buyer is an agent, buyer is an investor, buyer is related to, seller is an agent, seller is relating to, special financing, seller agrees to contribute blank towards buyer's closing costs. Again, this was 4 years ago. Now if you do get seller concessions, you don't have to write all this stuff in there because that part of the purchase contract has changed to the point where the buyer can use that money for whatever they want it to. You don't have to specify now. Anything that is related to a buyer's closing cost, it can be used. 1031 exchange. Escalation clause. Okay, so this is another one. This is one of those things that we really want to make sure that we are very careful with our verbiage on how we do escalation clauses. They can really get your client in trouble if you don't word them correctly. So the way that Charlie words it is, in the event of another offer is presented to the seller on or before acceptance of this offer, buyer agrees to increase their offer to the amount of the seller's net proceeds based on the other offer plus, and that's the dollar amount that you're willing to go over and above whatever offer you have, with the total amount not to exceed blank. So you put a cap on it so you know how far your buyer is willing to go up. On the condition, the seller provides the buyer with a copy of the signed offer from the other party with all of the terms and conditions. In the event a price adjustment is to be executed, all parties agree an addendum will be executed to reflect the new price within 24 hours of the acceptance. So that is the correct way to do it, to completely protect your client and make sure that you're not going to get them in trouble. And I really like that first sentence in there. In the event another offer is presented to the seller on or before acceptance of this offer. So they can't come back after they've accepted your offer and say, hey, we just got another offer for, $5,000 higher. We want you to go to that price. That would eliminate them from continuing to raise your price on it.
Also allows negotiation if an appraisal comes in.
Yes, it allows negotiation if appraisal comes in different. Yep. Lease option, termites. Okay, that's it. So those are Charlie's little clauses there. Those are quick, little, easy one. If you guys don't have a copy of this, request that your manager send you one, because we all have a copy of it. You guys in the Northwest, just ask Charlie for it yourself. Just close current tab. All right, that's the solar addendum. We'll get to that. What's
Maybe buyer agrees to release. Buyer agrees to pay X amount of dollars, non-refundable, be held that title. After completion of the inspection period.
I think that does that gives a basic piece of it.
Title. And then if anything else falls through, title would release it back to the buyer if it's a seller's breach.
Right. And if you just want to make all of the earnest money, you just erase the dollar amount there and just say buyer agrees to make earnest deposit non-refundable held at title after completion of inspection period. And really you're not really giving much up there, because saying, it just feels, it just gives the perception that you're giving something up, but you're really not giving much up there. I mean, if the seller defaults, then I think that may be something that you want to put in there, is with the exception of seller default. So you could put that way it would protect them if the seller defaults on it. Because that's really, once it comes, when you do that, what's to prevent the seller at that point from bailing on the contract and not fulfilling it and keeping your client's money? So you want to protect your client in that manner. Does that make sense to everybody at home? All right, good. I'm assuming that zero reaction is consent. All right, I'm going to switch over. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about as far as the purchase contract and what else? Oh, I want to jump over to that other thing that we have real quick. Oh, okay. No, we're good.
I can't write as fast as you can.
Yep. What did you want? The page that
Yeah.
there? Okay. All right, do a screen capture, take a picture if you guys want to.
You know what's on?
Yeah.
I think the email that you send is super important.
The email that you send to the listing agent?
You gotta make it clear.
Yes.
Noticeable.
Yep.
Like how many times you get an offer on a listing, you get 10, 20 offers on the listing.
Yep.
And it's here's our offer.
Yep.
Now I gotta go through all the documents and understand something.
Yep.
Like a summary.
Yeah, a clean, concise, clear summary goes a long way in making your offer stand out.
Yes,
Oh, I mean,
absolutely does.
I mean, you can't change it. Your buyer can only do what they can do.
Right.
But when you send that offer to them, clear, concise, so that agent looks at it, they click on it and they see purchase price. All the things that are important that you would want to know
Right.
are listed boldly and quickly.
Yep.
That's a long way for right away. That offer's going to stand out to the agent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I spend a good amount of time thinking about that email to that agent, and of course you try to talk to them.
Right.
They can't.
Yeah, I mean, composing a net sheet for them is great,
Yeah.
but composing it and adding it, it's another document that you're adding into it. But if you're right, if you can put that into your email and have that right there for them to be able to look at, it's going to help them know right away whether or not it's something they even want to consider.
If they start comparing offers, then it's easy for them to compare yours. Oh,
Yeah.
here's the purchase price. Here's
Yep.
the appraisal with the fall amount or whatever
Yep.
you have. And right away you can say, now you may lose because your terms aren't good enough.
Right.
However, you right there are going to stand out. Don't you agree? Especially when you get a
Yep.
listing, right?
Yeah, when
How
you
many
get
offers
13
you
of
get,
them, you're
and
like,
it's
oh my gosh.
How
Yep.
much time did this agent spend in trying to make an offer that was palatable to me, make it easier for me?
Well,
Almost do
it's
like a spreadsheet like what Stephanie does.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of time. You have a summary.
The summary, you can look at it and, all right, I know what that offer is.
right. Yeah, it's again, guys. When I started this little session off, that was one of the first things that I talked about was conversations, having meaningful conversations, and really relating to the other side and let them know that you are going to be easy to work with. I've got my stuff together. I'm going to be easy to work with. My client's going to be easy to work with. We're pre-approved through this person. We've got our pre-qualification form. Here is their number. If you want to call and talk to the lender, here is their number. They're happy to talk to you and explain to you as well. All that information is great to pass along to the other side. And again, it's going to make you stand out. What's going to make your offer stand out? That's what we really want to do. What things can we do to make it stand out? And making sure that they understand you are going to be an easy agent to work with goes a long way. Patrick, you've done numerous transactions that way where you've had, it's a number of offers that have come in, and you have some pull with your seller when it comes to taking a look at offers and say, okay, well, this one it looks great, but look at the way the offer is written. And this one it's about the same, but look at the way this offer is written. And if they're written concisely and if they are conveyed correctly, it makes a world of difference. If you're looking at apples to apples, it makes a difference. Yes.
So on the second, when Prosperity did their first meeting,
Yes.
I know we're still working on what type of verbiage we can put in
Yeah.
If we can put any verbiage, if you are using a lender and it's not just pre-qualified, it's pre-approved.
Yes.
And so if you can share with the listing agent, either on the contract, which we're working on verbiage for that,
Yep.
or at least in the summary, like John was talking about, to tell the listing agent that your buyers are pre-approved, not just pre-qualified.
We've
They've
gone
been
through
all the way
underwriting for this dollar
underwriting,
amount. Yep.
contingent upon subject, address, title,
And
insurance,
appraisal.
and appraisal.
Yep.
But you can say that's not quite as good as cash, but kind of as good as cash.
Almost.
So pre-approval, and even if it's not Prosperity, sorry Prosperity, but if you can have your lender go all that way
Right.
to ensure that they are 100% pre-approved.
Right. And the other thing on that is if you're using Prosperity, and if Prosperity is because they have their guarantee. They've got their $10,000 guarantee. Well, that's we've got to work on verbiage on that. If we can put that into the contract and what our verbiage is. When we get that clarification, hopefully we'll have that by the 18th. Is that the next one? 16th. So if we have that by the 16th, hopefully we'll have some of that verbiage cleared up and those questions can be answered. And again, those are things that can help differentiate your offer from somebody else. If the lender is willing to guarantee with a $10,000 or $5,000, guarantee that they will close on time, that it will not be a lender issue, that might go a long way towards a seller accepting your offer over somebody else as well.
And really, the lenders you work with, they should, at minimum, they should call.
Absolutely.
If they're not willing to call the listing
Yep.
agent, then maybe find another.
Yeah, I know Ashley is. I know Ashley has done it. I know that, people that I've recommended, that people who are my preferred lenders absolutely will call. Yeah, they will call the other side. All you have to do is say, hey, you know, I'm sending an offer into this person. You know, here's their phone number. Please give them a phone call. It's 5 minutes to take a phone call and talk to them.
Right? On any listings you took last year, how
No.
many calls the lender did you get? When they did, it
Yep.
rung in your ear.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, it makes them stand out. All right, are you guys? Hopefully, you're still seeing this here. This is the agent cheat sheet that Rebecca came up with. So we're going to just run through this real quick, and then we'll get on to the solar addendum and finish up with the solar addendum. Agent cheat sheet. So remember to sell yourself first. From the moment you're verifying availability, if you know it's a home your client will most likely want to write an offer on, be easy to work with. Be professional, experienced, and stalk them for updates, asking them for questions so that you can prepare a clean offer for them to be easy for them to accept. Ask for the seller's motivation up front. Again, these are the things that I just talked about as well. Have the buyer's lender do the same. Again, that we just talked about that. Having the lender do it. Reduce inspection period to 5 days. Again, we talked about that. Make earnest money non-refundable after 5 days inspection period. Again, that's we talked about that, the non-refundable piece. Be flexible with closing and possession. That's something that we really didn't talk a whole lot about. Was I know that right now people are talking about pre-possession or post-possession agreements. Those, they are so dangerous, guys. If you can avoid them, please avoid them at all costs. If it's going to be a post-possession and if it's longer than 30 days, it's not a post-possession agreement, it's a lease back. And you have to have a lease in place if it's longer than 30 days. So just keep that in mind as well. Longer than 30 days, it's a lease back, it's not a post-possession. Avoid post-possessions if you can, and know the pitfalls of post-possession so that you can warn your client as to why they're not a good idea, and that you can also help warn the seller why they're not a good idea, because sometimes the seller's agent may not realize what they're getting their client into either. This whole, you know, the whole company that shall not be named that says you can stay in your house up for up to 6 months after close of escrow. It's just opened up this can of worms that can be really dangerous. And I think for years, I think we're going to see lawsuits over these things. All right. Offer to pay seller's closing costs up to 1% of sales price instead of asking them to pay the buyer. That's we talked about that one. Either waive the appraisal entirely or include an appraisal guarantee. Buyer's guarantee they'll pay X above the appraised value. Again, that's the shortfall. Include an escalation clause. Buyer will agree, blah, blah, blah. We've done that one. Cash and conventional offers are always preferred by sellers and listers, so try to get your clients qualified. Conventional in case they can't win the house with a VA or FHA loan. I don't know why people would use an FHA loan right now unless they could not qualify for a conventional loan. You can get the same down payment on a conventional loan as you can on an FHA. So FHA, I don't know why somebody would try to do an FHA right now unless they absolutely just couldn't qualify for a conventional loan. So just try to make sure you're helping and talking with your lender on that as well. Pull on the heartstrings, tell your client's story, or better yet, have them do with a sincere, sweet letter. Don't do this. Just don't. I'm just going to say don't do that. Don't do a love letter.
You know
It's
you know what though? You can flatter the seller.
yes, you can. You can say my clients loved your house. They loved this about your house. They love that your clients took care of the home. There's definite pride of ownership, and my clients so appreciated that. Those things again will go a long way towards the seller going, oh, how sweet.
Look
So,
forward to
yep,
taking care of the house the way that your folks have.
correct.
Stuff like that.
Stuff like that is great, and you can throw that into your little your email that you're sending over to them. Those kind of things are great. Yes. It's not cost. It's inspection and it's qualification of the home qualification part of it is more stringent. It's a little more stringent. It's not terrible, but yeah. 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 The only other problem with VA is that VAs are just, most of them are zero down. A lot of them are zero down. Zero down, a zero down appraisal is going to be a lot more stringent than a 20% down, even a 10% down appraisal. The appraiser is going to be a lot more stringent on his pricing. You would think appraised value would be appraised value, but it's not. If you're appraising it and it's 100% financing, that appraiser is going to be a little bit more. He's going to be he's going to try to err more on the side of caution on that side. Yeah. Correct. It's the VA, not necessarily VA, but if it's a zero down VA, it's going to definitely be different than a VA that's putting a chunk of money down. Absolutely.
Well, just to not freak out sellers though, I've had 3 buyers with no down VAs and they've all appraised
That's
in
great.
the last year. In fact, I just had one that came in this month and the appraisal came in a week, 2,000 over. So I just don't want, I think that the problem is sometimes that the agents try to dissuade the seller from accepting VAs, and I just don't want that stereotype out there.
And Sherry, did you represent the buyer or the seller with your VA?
Did you represent buyer or seller?
Buyer or seller with your VA?
I have always represented the buyer, but I do think I did have one that was the seller, but
The
fortunately,
reason I ask is because USAA is a major one for VA, but they tend to take a long time. And I love
This
USAA.
wasn't-
I'm with USAA,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
they just
this
tend to take
was
a long time.
Coastal Pacific was the lender on one of them, and another California one. But I've not used USAA. I've never had them for a lender on any of them.
Couple of things here that I'm just kind of reading through some of the notes that were in here. There's the one that I highlighted there, use additional addendum for waiving appraisal, making earnest money hard, agreeing to be a backup. If you agree to be a backup, get your backup offer executed. Have the seller sign it as a backup offer. Use the additional clause addendum and make it a backup offer. Get it signed, get it executed. So if the other one falls apart, yours automatically takes effect and you don't go back into the whole rotation of having to go through and negotiate and come up with all that stuff again. So it's still a great thing to do in this market. Find houses that are pending, find them that are under contract accepting backups. Go in and take a look at it. And if your client loves it, put backup offers in, guys, because we're still seeing a bunch of these that are falling out. They're falling out for a myriad of reasons, buyer's remorse, along with everything else. So that's a great way to help get your offers accepted. Proof of funds if you're required. That's what I was looking at here. Include the proof of funds if you are guaranteeing above appraised value. So if you're using an appraisal shortfall, make sure that you are proving that your client has those funds. Having that proof of funds available is also going to go a long way to differentiating yourself from another offer. Still understands that the premise can be sold to someone else in either party. Continue working. No, we're not rebooting now. Part of throughout the counter offer. Yeah. So just one last thing on being in a backup position. If your client is in a backup position, it doesn't mean they can't go out and look at other houses and they can't put an offer on another place. Backup position just means that they have the first right of refusal. So if they find something else and you get them under contract somewhere else, just make sure you send an email to the other seller and say, my client is rescinding his offer. Rescinding your offer is going to be the key there, because if you don't rescind your offer, if their other offer cancels, they're going to make yours go into effect and they're going to want you to open up escrow and you're going to be under contract. Then you've got to cancel the contract and go out that way. So it's going to be much easier if you just rescind your offer if you go under contract in another property. No, if you're rescinding your offer, no, just the sending of your email is good enough. You don't have to have a response back from them to make it legal. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add on that? Otherwise, I'm going to jump over to the solar